Alright, we move on to the next part, or rather the second session of our discussion of a thing of beauty. And to begin this session, we need to recapitulate what we've already covered in the first session. And in the first session, the important points that we covered were whatever John Keats has said in this excerpt is enduring and is of eternal value and has universal application. He then proceeds on to enlist 4 distinct characteristics that a thing must possess in order to be called beautiful. And the most important, or equally important, or one of the most important characteristics is that if a thing has to be called beautiful, its value must increase over a period of time, and the value may mean importance, significance, or our realization of its importance or significance. You may, in order to understand this, in order to understand the characteristic that its value must increase over a period of time, you may take an example of a book or an autobiography or a biography. We read it for the first time, we find it very interesting and important, and it teaches us so many lessons of life. Having read that, we move on and then find that we are confronted with a particular problem which life doesn't seem to offer. Someone suggests that we read that book once again. We read it and we find the exact answer in the book that we were looking for. So its value has increased over a period of time. Next, he moves on to talk of how this world is full of feeling of hatred, feeling of animosity, enmity, and the word that he uses is spite. And he enlists about 3 reasons, about 3 causes for the excess or abundance of spite on earth. This is the word, spite. And spite, as I have already discussed, there is an excess of spite on earth, and the first cause is despondence or despondency, a state of hopelessness. The next cause may not necessarily be in that order as talked of in the poem. A cruel scarcity, that is inhuman dearth of noble natures. And the fourth is, and the next one is that life in general is insecure. The sense of insecurity also causes a feeling of spite, and that the path that we all plan to tread on to fulfill our aim may be or is lined up with people who may use corrupt means to accomplish what we want to through our sheer hard work. So all this causes a lot of spite. And he next goes on to say that despite all this, in spite of a thick pall of gloom, as a consequence of all this, a mere sight of a beautiful thing, even a passing glimpse of a beautiful thing, punctures the pall of gloom, cover of gloom. This is how he brings home the importance of a beautiful thing. He next moves on to give examples of all things beautiful on earth, and the earth is replete with all things beautiful on earth. The sun, the moon, and the sun, the moon, trees young and old, he says trees young and old, all these things are beautiful. He goes on to say, especially those trees which give a blessing in the form of shade to as humble, as meek an animal as sheep. He specifically mentions sheep, no other animal. He purposely mentions sheep in order to reinforce his faith in Christianity. In order to reinforce his faith in Christianity, he talks of sheep and no other animal. Because in the Bible, Lord Christ has been described as tending sheep. Lord Christ has been described as tending sheep, and therefore he talks of this animal. He moves on to give so many other examples of beautiful things. He says daffodils in their natural habitat, not the ones plucked and decorated in a flower vase in a drawing room, are examples of beautiful things in their natural habitat, in the green, in the forest, in the ecosystem that they thrive in, are also examples of beautiful things. He next moves on to give yet another example of a beautiful thing. And this beautiful thing comes into existence as a result of collaboration in nature. This is the example of a beautiful thing that he gives. He says is actually the result of collaboration in nature, and the collaboration here takes place between rivulet carrying crystal clear water and shade under a tree. The result of this is a cooling, covered, as the poet puts it, a cool shade under a tree is an example of a beautiful thing. So he apprises us with all examples of beautiful things on earth, and he makes a very strong statement now at this juncture. He says all beautiful things. It is not that all beautiful things only exist in the world of the living. Beautiful things also, all beautiful things also exist in the world of the dead. This is very important. This is very, very important. He says all beautiful things also exist, that is, beautiful things also exist in the world of the dead. In the world of the dead, he says. This is what he says. And he moves on to give us examples of all beautiful things on earth. He gives examples of, and this is in keeping with his definition of beautiful things. This is for us to understand how, for example, the example that he gives, their biographies, their autobiographies are examples of beauty.